and welcome to this week's video. Now in this week's video I'm going to be comparing some guitar cables. This has been prompted by the fact that I had to buy some new ones because I had a failure on my acoustic guitar rig. One of my cables I've been using for quite a long time decided to give up. Now they are different cables to I use on my electric guitar rig, and the cables I use on my electric guitar rig are George L's cables. I'm a bit out of the loop with cables because the cables that I bought, and this was the last time I really properly looked into it, the George L's ones, about 15 years ago, they have never failed me, and that's doing over 200 gigs a year at least. Don't know exactly, not very scientific, but they've never gone wrong. So I haven't had to buy new cables for a long time, but prompted by this failure, I thought I'd better look into it. So I decided to do some research. Now I'm always a bit worried about using the word research, because really research I think is, these people who are experts in a very narrow field, breaking boundaries, pushing the boundaries, dedicating their life to it, whereas what I did was spend 10 minutes Googling. Now the first thing I went to look for was a document that I remember reading a long time ago, I think probably when I bought the George L's cables, and what influenced my decision, and it's this document called Cable Summit. Now I shall link to that in the description here. As I say, I think it's a bit out of date. I'm not sure whether it's been updated, but it goes over all of these very high-end cables. Well, there's a wide range of cables it goes over, but they're all the reasonable ones going up to the very high-end ones. And the reason I got the George L's ones at the time was they fared very well in performance and they weren't too expensive. Plus there were people like Eric Johnson and stuff were using them. And really, I'm not totally a cable nerd. I'm not sure. I know it makes a difference, but I don't know how much difference that makes. I just wanted something that was reliable and I didn't lose any tone. So in my research, I discovered that there's a sort of general consensus of opinion that the best cables around at the moment are Mogami 2425, I think they're called. Now this seemed to be slightly contradicted by this Cable Summit document, because in there the Mogami cables didn't fare very well, but as I say, the document was a bit out of date, and there were several different polls that I saw and they all agreed on these Mogami cables. And then I looked at, on the Vertex Effects YouTube channel, they did a video reviewing one of these sort of league tables, and they agreed that they thought these were very good cables. So I thought, well, if they think they're good, I'm going to get some. Now on the Vertex Effects video, I became aware of something that I didn't know was meant to be an issue with the George L's cables. They were going on about various cables having a distinct sound, and they categorised these George L's cables as having a distinct sound, and looking into it more, these have a very, very low capacitance, much lower than even some of the higher end ones. So some people think the holy grail of a good guitar tone is a low capacitance, but not everyone does. Some people think that it can colour the tone, other people are going for more transparency. What I didn't realise until I looked at the Vertex Effects video was these are considered unreliable, these George L's, because they're solderless. Now, I also discovered watching that video, actually I did know this, I discovered it not that long ago, but the way that in America they pronounce solder. Now I'm going to put the word up here. If I'm not very much mistaken, it says S-O-L-D-E-R, solder. But in America they don't pronounce the L. And the very first time I saw this on a YouTube video talking about solder, I literally didn't know what they were talking about. I mean, I knew in the context, what's solder? Anyway, that's an aside. I don't know why the L is missing. But these cables that I've got, I bought them, they were pre-made, so they were made by someone who knew what they were doing. And they've never failed me in 15 years, 200 odd gigs a year. They've got the jacket on, which I guess prevents them from being pulled out. I did at the same time, roughly at the same time, bought a kit to make up the patch cables, which connected all of my pedals. And I did have a few problems with those, and I had to then sort of take them apart and tighten them back up. But once I'd worked out how to tighten them up and fit them all together, I never had a problem again, and I've not had any failures on my pedal board for a long time now. And the other thing is they do sound really good, or you don't lose any tone with them. I've got probably, I don't know, maybe, I should know this, shouldn't I, 8 to 10 maybe more pedals on my pedal board, nearly all connected up with George L's cables. If I compare it, if I take the cable out of the first pedal and plug it straight into the amp, there's a very slight difference, but considering there's so much in between, those George L's cables are retaining a lot of the guitar tone. The other reason I decided to go for the Mogami cables is because there's a website that I've discovered, I think, on a guitar rig rundown called Mike Hill Services, which is based in the UK, and it was one of the techs for one of the really big artists. It was either Brian May or Angus Young or someone. I think they both use them. They use Mike Hill Services for all their touring rig, and they only offer 3 different cables they make up, and 2 of them are the Mogami ones, and I think there's Van Dam is the other one. So I thought, well, if they're offering them, they offer the good quality kit that they send out on tour with the biggest artists in the world. They're not going to send out rubbish. So I decided I was going to get a couple of the cables, and they've got a brilliant website. They've been very helpful. This is only the second thing I've ordered from them since I discovered them. The first thing was some patch cables, which I contacted them because I wanted them slightly longer than they were offering on the drop down on the website, and they just said, just make a note how long you want them. I'll make them a little bit longer, no charge. So I know they're a brilliant company. The delivery is very fast. So I got these Mogami 24, well, where's it written on there? Mogami, sorry, it's 2524. Can't remember whether I said that right before. The other thing they do is they, for no extra charge, is they put your name on the heat shrink there. So they're very well made. They came very quickly, very well packaged in these nice cable ties. So I got 3 meter ones. So I thought I would make this video and compare the cables. I have actually done a gig already with the Mike Hill Mogami cables. Now I'm going to show you 2 clips here. Now they're not clips from the same gig, so this isn't that scientific in it. You might not be able to hear any difference. Not sure I can, but I'm going to show you a clip using the new cables from the gig the other day, and I'll show you a slightly older clip using my George L's cables, which I've used for a long time. So could you hear a difference? The thing to consider here is I actually could hear a slight difference. I thought that the new cables were less toppy. I think these George L's cables are considered to be quite toppy. So I actually compensated by turning the treble up on the amp. So it's not really a fair direct comparison. So what I need to do now is a fair direct comparison. I'm going to do it here. Now I've got my Milkman amp here. That's quite a toppy amp, so I think this is going to, and a clean amp. So I think this is really going to show if there is a difference in sound. I'm really interested to hear this because I haven't actually done this yet. I'm going to do this live on camera here, so I'll actually find out at the same time as you do. Well, it'll be a bit before because I will have recorded it, then you're watching it after I've recorded it. But I'm going to find it out as I do it. I'm going to test it by plugging the a guitar straight into the amp, just using these 2 cables to compare. Now that will be using the microphone on the camera. So what I'm going to do after that is I'm going to record it directly into the computer, into my sound card, and see if we can hear the difference then. So first things first, let's get this amp test going. I've actually got my cables out that I use live, these ones that I've been using for 15 years, because they're about the same length as the because I've got some other spare George L's ones I bought at the same time. I'm using my actual cables that I use all the time. I bought 3 metre cables, and these are about 3 metres, because look at all the different things. The capacitance is affected by the length of the cable. So if you've got longer or shorter cable, it's going to affect that. So I think the best comparison is to get the two that are roughly the same length. So these are about 3 metres. And I don't know if I can get the focus here, but the cable, you can see how sort of worn and tarnished it is from going in and out of the guitars and the amps. But as I say, this hasn't let me down in all that time. Probably saying that's going to go wrong tomorrow, isn't it? But it doesn't matter, I've got new cables. So let me try this. Here we go. Starting with a 335. I've put all of the EQ flat on the Milkman amp. I've got the guitar on full, and I've got it on the bridge pickup. So this is the George L's. Let's swap over to the Mogamis. Right, I've got the Mogami plugged in now with my name emblazoned on the jack socket. Here we go. Now I'm going to do a A-B comparison here when I edit the video. So I'm only going on what I can sense here. This sounds toppier, which I wasn't expecting, but it sounds more scooped, like it's a smiley face EQ. The other one sounds more middly. Let me go back to the other one. I'm doing this in real time now. It's difficult comparing. It'd be better if I had a box to switch really, but then I'd have to introduce another cable which would affect it. That does sound, I'm surprised, I didn't think it was going to sound that different. It does sound quite different. This sounds sort of louder and more middly, this George L's cable, compared to the other one. But they're not, I can't sense any lack of treble, any loss, it's just a different sound, so interesting. Right, let's do it with the computer, straight into the computer, because I think then we will be able to more realistically hear a difference. I can A-B them then. Okay, what I've done is I've plugged my 335 straight into my UAD sound card. So I've DI'd it. The first one you're going to hear is DIing. So here we go. I've cut up the clips. I've just strummed an open G chord because I thought that was a pretty good way of doing it. It's my 335 again on the treble pickup. So here we go. Starting off with the Mogami for a bar, then the George L's for a bar, Mogami for a bar, George L's for a bar. I'll put the labels on the screen. Here we go. Now, there's inconsistencies in the way I'm playing, I think, is the biggest difference. I can't hear a vastly the difference. I can hear a difference between the clips, but I think that's more to do with how hard I'm strumming the guitar. So the next clips, I use the Buxton Betty UAD plugin on a fairly clean sound. So just to give an idea on an amp sound. And I've done the same thing, I've alternated it. This time, starting with the George L's. If you look here, it says Mogami, but that's because I've recorded it onto the wrong channel and I shifted it. I can hear more difference there. The Mogami cable definitely sounds more toppy, and it's a little bit louder, I think. I'm getting the impression. So third test, I've done it through a Marshall amp. These are all plugged in on the Unison thing on the sound card, so they're in real time, they're applying the plug-in rather than afterwards. So here we go. This is starting with the Mogami. This is a Marshall Plexi, sort of quite wound up, so it's driven. So give us more of an idea of a driven sound. See how different that sounds. I can hear a difference there again. I'm wondering whether the clip should have been longer. But the George L's sounds slightly less toppy and a bit fatter, which it did on the other one. I think the other one sounds more scooped. That's what I thought when I was listening to the amp. And it's more pronounced with this driven sound because I guess it's more naturally compressed. And it's a more middly tone because everything's compressed. The trebles aren't springing out quite as much. So anyway, that's not as much difference as I thought I was going to experience, but it does make me feel glad that maybe I don't know if I'd have spent £200 on each cable. Talking of that, now the cables are about £25 each, which I think is very reasonable from Mike Hill, plus a bit of delivery. And as you saw, they came all nicely coiled up with my name on it as well, which is very nice. So unsure here, so please leave me a comment, let me know, see if you could hear the difference, what you think. I can probably get a hold of some other really high-end cables that I can test here, so if you're interested, please leave me a comment and I shall do some further testing with some more expensive sort of £200 cables, see how that compares, because these are, I think the George L's are still more expensive than the Mogamis, but these are kind of, as I say, the Mogami has universally been kind of lauded as the kind of best cable you can get now, and I don't know if that was regardless of, you know, cost. I think that was just the ones it said, so I don't know if they're just talking the sort of mass produced ones rather than the really high-end hi-fi type ones. So let me know what you think, please leave me a comment. If you enjoyed the video, please hit subscribe as well, hit the bell, then you know when I've got new videos coming out, and I'm bringing out new videos at 7 PM every Friday UK time. I think I'll leave you with another gig clip. Hope to see you next week.